So my name is Durga Smolin, and I am here to talk about the music and how it affected me since I came to Ananda, and actually before. So I wanted to start by saying that music has been important to me since I was a little child. I took ballet lessons, I took piano lessons, my mothers and brothers would sing to me, and I just loved being around the energy of music, usually very happy music. And then when I was about 8, my grandfather got a player piano. And that's a piano that you can stick a roll of music into, and then it plays whatever the notes say. And so he and I would dance endlessly to the 40s music. So I developed a love for the music of Glenn Miller and all the big bands of that era. And then when I became older, I got involved in the 60s movement, and I was very much into the music at that time. But I was really drawn to music that had a meaning or that was just soothing. And so I didn't do all the music of the 60s, but I did quite a bit of it, and I definitely related to the 60s. And then at some point in my life, I realized that wasn't going to do it for me. I needed something different. And I lived in Berkeley, and we had a music store, and I went to the music store one day, and at that time we were playing LPs, long playing records. And I was flipping through all the albums, and I came across this album called Songs of the Soul. And it was a recording that Swami Kriyananda made with some of the people from Ananda village. I didn't know who he was, I didn't know the people, but I was drawn originally to his face, his joy, and the joy of the people that were on the back cover as well. And I took it home and I played it pretty much nonstop for about a year. At that time, Vidura and I were looking for a place to live. We were drawn to yoga. We were drawn to anywhere that would have school for our children. And so we found Ananda in 1974. Part of Ananda at that time, we lived at the meditation retreat, was listening to Swamiji play his songs on his guitar. So we would go down to the meadows up there, and if it didn't have to be a real event, it could be any time, he would invite us to come down and sing. And so we learned the songs. At that time, there weren't that many. There were maybe, 10, 20 songs at the most. And he would play them with such joy. And I remember thinking, he really means this. He's writing songs, he's writing the words of things that he either knows about or knows things that are to come. And I was very touched by his presence and his truth. So for a few years, the music was just haphazard. It would come, you wouldn't know when it would come. And then Swamiji started a group called the Gandharvas, and they were a small singing group that you had to try out for, but I was too shy to try out for, so I didn't. But it was a really nice group, and eventually I became part of that group. But in 1978, we had a fire in 1976 that destroyed most of the community. And many people wanted to stay and rebuild. And Swamiji also wanted to take Ananda out into the United States. So with help from friends, they created a 4-month tour through all if not most of the United States. All the major cities was 4 months. And every week we would go to a city. Swami would have a lecture called The Joy of Living, What is Joy? And the singers would sing. The reason I went on that tour is that I was sitting in the dome one day. There was an event going on, and Swami came up to me and said, "Do you sing?" And I said, "A little bit." And he said, "Well, come downstairs. There's a group of people, and I'm going to audition you to see if you would like to go on the Joy Tours. So I did, and he asked me to sing one of his songs, but I didn't know any of his songs by heart. So he said, well, do you know Silent Night? I said, yes. So I sang Silent Night the best I could. So he took me and Vidura and I believe 12 other people on the trip. And we learned so much. So as part of a singing group, small singing group, and Maitri, Lakshman Simpson, Ram went on it, Kalyani, Shivani, I think, and myself. I think we were the singing group at that time. So we would sing on Fridays. We'd sing on the all-day seminar. On Saturdays, we'd sing at Sunday service on Sunday. And then Monday, we'd drive off in our motorhome and we would go to the next city. So we did that for 4 months. So you can imagine the training that we got at that time. And Swami would come to our rehearsals once in a while and he would say, okay, Durga, sing for me, or Lakshman, sing for me, or sing a note. And slowly, we tried to become better at singing. And I don't know if I succeeded that well, but it certainly was a great help and made me more comfortable singing in front of people. So we went on a 4-month tour, and then in 1985, I believe, Swamiji went to the Holy Land, and he went with his wife Rosanna. And when he came back from that trip, I remember being in San Francisco, and he came to the dining room where we were all gathered. He had a little keyboard, small, and he was thrilled about the music that had come through him on this trip. So he went to where Jesus was born. He went to where Jesus taught his disciples. We went to where the Gethsemane. We went all over Jesus's life. And he had been there and he had channeled these songs, and then he was trying to explain them to us. And it was thrilling to hear and see how moved he was by this music, because you knew he could hear everything in his mind, and all we could hear was Mother of Wisdom, one note at a time. But his look on his face told us everything, and we couldn't wait to hear it as a full orchestra, as a full choir, which we did later on. And it was not long after that that Ananda, wasn't called Ananda Travels then, but we started, maybe it was Ananda Pilgrimages, and Ananda started pilgrimages to the Holy Land. And we were the first group. Swamiji went with us, and it was thrilling to go to the places where Swami had been, where Christ lived, and we would sing these songs. And it made it come so alive. Jesus' life became so alive, so deep, and it was really an experience of a lifetime. So then in I believe it was 86, he wrote the Festival of Light, and he wrote it in Assisi. But again, when he was singing it for us, or reading it to us, or singing us the songs, it took you one step deeper into Swami's consciousness, into what he was trying to convey to us, so that we could say it and we could understand and we could feel the energy that he put into the festival itself and the music that went along with it. Some years later, I'm talking about the choir now. I was part of this choir. And some years later, in the year 2000, he wanted to take a group to Italy, a singing group, a choir group to Italy. So people came from all the colonies, from Assisi. We went over there and we sang in 6, I think, major cities: Bologna, Milan, Assisi, Rome. And we would go to churches and we would sing the oratorio. And the thing I remember, and Swami talked about, was this one particular place we were. And we had just finished the oratorio. And as elderly man came up to Swami, tears in his eyes, and he said, I didn't understand a word that was said, but I understood everything in my heart. So he was weeping. Swamiji had tears. It was a very moving moment. And also for the singers, again, the impact of what it had on 2010, Swami invited us to go to LA, to Los Angeles, to be part of a group that was going there. And we did. And I stayed there for 1 year and then went back for another 4 months. And during that time, it was part of the music until a couple years went by, and then I couldn't sing anymore very well. Something happened with my voice. I'm sure it was God's will. I took it as God's will, but it was a little bit of a heartache because I loved singing. I loved feeling God through the music so much. But that was sort of the end of my time being in the choir. But what happened, and I want to go back a bit to my experience with the chanting, because the chanting, well, it was pivotal to my life on so many levels. When I first came to Ananda, people were chanting. Swami would lead everything. He would lead the chanting. There was a lady here, Shivani. She's still part of Ananda. And she taught me how to play the harmonium because I very much wanted to learn. Because I had had piano lessons as a child, I caught on very easily. And so she taught me how to chant. And from then on, I chanted all the time I could. Certainly in my meditations, I joined groups that would be singing so I could learn more and more chants. I tried to learn every chant that I could get my hands on that was part of Ananda. So one day I was at the meditation retreat, and I believe Parvati had just given a class. And as we were walking down to our cars, she pulled out her harmonium and she said to us, she said, you know, sometimes your meditations are dry. Sometimes it's very hard to meditate. I had only been at Ananda a year or so at this time, so I was fascinated by what she had to say. And then she said, but you know, you can always chant. If you're having a dry spell, if your meditations aren't so good, just stop and sing a song to God and tune into God through the music and through the chanting. And you will find, because you're opening your heart, that you will want to meditate after that. And I found that true over and over again in my life at Ananda. The chanting became so important, so real to me. And because some of the chants and the songs of the soul album were Indian. I had never experienced Indian chanting, but Swami would sing songs, beautiful, so moving, so heartfelt, and some bhajans, some chanting. So that, I don't know how many on that album are Indian, but a fair amount, and I was in love with the Indian chants. And probably, unfortunately, too in love with the Indian chants, because I learned that many as I could later on, and I taught people the Indian chants, and we started doing a lot of the Indian chants in our kirtans. And at some point, and I'm sure I'm not the only one he was speaking to, but I took it very personally, Swamiji wrote what is now known as the chanting letter, which really changed our thinking about chanting, about Indian music, about what our role was in the music. How are we relating to others? What are we giving of Ananda? Because Swami would say, give Ananda to the guests. Don't just go wild with your kirtans. Give them Ananda, give them the joy, give them the love and the devotion that you feel because they've come for Ananda. Give them Ananda. So I also took that very much to heart. I went through a bit of a struggle with the chanting letter. I will read parts of it to you because it's very, very important to the future of Ananda. The music is treated all too often as though it were a mere sideline. It is, however, in fact, central to everything we do. And I really think we shouldn't sing too many Indian chants. We are disciples of a new ray, and within that ray, a new kind of music has been produced. I think we should honor this fact and emphasize it more. I worry about the emotionalism of the music that sometimes comes through, because music is so much more than entertainment. It doesn't merely reflect a state of consciousness, it also generates it. A taste for emotional music, if it is too much encouraged, will almost certainly change Ananda's very state of consciousness, in time, its underlying vibration. And he goes on much more about the Indian chants and how Master rarely sang them. He mostly sang the ones that he created or words that he put into Indian chants, singing them in English, and on and on. It's a letter I think anyone who is chanting in the position of leading kirtans, leading sadhanas, should read it and really take it to heart. It really changed my thinking about chanting a lot. So I went through about a week of feeling badly about myself because I had trained people, because I did so much of it myself. And I had to come to terms with the fact that what he was saying was absolutely true. And I had to think about it and change part of what I was doing. But an interesting thing happened to me about, a few weeks later. I was asked to lead an Indian kirtan for Ananda's fundraising department. And they were having an Indian fundraiser. Swami was going to be there. And they wanted a kirtan. And they wanted me to lead it. And they wanted me to play Indian chants. So looking back on it, it seems perfectly natural and no big deal. For me at the time, it's extremely excruciating because I didn't know what to do. The easiest thing would have been to go to Swamiji and talk to him about it, but I couldn't. So I just thought about it, mused over it. And so the time came. We had a beautiful Indian dinner, went into the dome at the Crystal Hermitage. Swamiji was there, and I was to lead the kirtan. So one thing I knew was to do the simple Indian chants, as simple as I could. Hari Bol, Hari Om, Om Kali, things that were very simple. So I did those. But I had no idea what Swami was going to say or react. I prayed a lot. And I don't usually open my eyes when I lead kirtans. I usually have them closed because I get so much from them. I want to feel Divine Mother or Master's presence. So I keep my eyes closed. But Vidura had his eyes open. And when it was over, and I was just, I don't know if I was shaking, but I was nervous. Vidura came up to me and said, I think it was fine. I think Swami was right with you. I watched him the whole time, and it seemed like he was with you and going inward. Then, after it was over, again, Swamiji came up to me and said, Durga, can I see you downstairs? So I had to go through that all over again. So Vidura and I went down, and he said, that was beautiful. So he was just encouraging me and tuning into me, I'm sure. And then he said, I don't really enjoy hearing the Indian chants often because my heart wants to be in India. And Master has not given me the signal that it's time to go yet. So sometimes when I suggest a chant and you think, oh, it's time for an Indian chant, I won't use that at that time because my heart hurts I want to be in India. I want to be with the Master in India. So that was a great prayer that went up and was answered. I learned so much from that, to just tune in to what was really trying to happen, and not just my likes and dislikes and worries about what Swamiji would say, but tuning into what was right in that moment. Nirmala and was a large part of the chanting also at that time. And we all wanted to know how to do things in the right way. It's not like today at Ananda when it's so obvious maybe to people what to do and what not to do. We were all learning. And so one day she had invited us to the dome with Swami and asked him if he would come and help us, especially with the guitar chanting, because he had brought in guitars earlier when he felt that the chanting was lagging a bit, and this is also in the letter. But he didn't want guitars for everything. And so we wanted to know what's okay and what isn't. And so we came to the Hermitage with him and we sang. So we played some of the chants that we had been chanting and asking his opinion. And so he would say, "That's beautiful the way you're playing it. The guitar is fine, but the chords aren't exactly right. So let's change this, see how this sounds and see how this sounds. It doesn't sound quite right to me." And so he worked with us quite a bit that afternoon. At one point, he said, we were singing, I think it was "Will That Day Come to Me, Ma?" And we played it and sang it. And Swamiji stopped and he said, "This is how I remember Master singing this chant." And he started with the harmonium, singing, I can almost not even say it. He started singing that chant. And I closed my eyes. And after about one stanza, I would have sworn to you that Swami had traded places with Master. And Master was singing. His voice changed. He was so deep. And I was just crying. And the power of it was incredible. Now, we can't sing like that. Maybe someday we will. But we got an idea, a taste of what it is to be that deep and that focused and that much in love with Divine Mother. Another time, Jeannie and I went to Swamiji again. We wanted to know what to sing guitars with, what not. So we went and we talked to him for quite a bit. And basically, as I remember it, and Jeannie has to also tell you her side of it, but as I remember it, he would say, if a chant stands on its own and it's very deep and it's more a slower chant, like Blue Lotus Feet or something, doesn't need guitar. But if it needs a beat or if it needs more energy, then bring the guitar in. But the guitars are to support the harmoniums and support the chant. Now, later on, I don't know if I should mention his name, but I will, Panduranga came to Ananda, and he was an excellent guitar player. And I just remember playing with him. I would ask him to play with us, with our group, because he was able to tune into what the guitar could do to enhance. So I would play something on the harmonium, and maybe it was a slower chant, and he would be, I remember him being behind me, playing the guitar, but more notes, beautiful melodies, and it was just exquisite. So definitely, I'm not saying not to use guitars. I'm not even saying not to use guitars for rhythm. Be more sensitive. Swami didn't like the bang, 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 bang that guitars can do. But he loved having the guitars part of it. And he even wrote chants for guitars. So after the letter came out, my chanting, personal chanting in my own meditation room was different. I didn't want to play any Indian chants in my own meditation anymore. I wanted to tune in more and more to Master and Swami. And so I let that go. And it was beautiful, and I loved it. And we played Indian chants once in a while, but I wanted to tune in more and more deeply to Swamiji and my guru. So for me, there was a big change. Also, around 1986, we started our pilgrimages to India. And the first year, the letter hadn't come out yet. So the first year, it was like, oh, good, now we're going to India. We can play all these chants. And we did, and it was great. And we played Master's chants too, but my focus in my mind was, well, we're in India, we should play Indian. But the second pilgrimage, I had a whole different feeling about it. I remember the first night we were in India, I remember thinking, because I would plan what chants to sing for the upcoming morning sadhanas. I would always chant, and a lot of times depending on where we were going and how it related to where we were going. But the thought came to me, right from God, I'm sure, it's time to let the Indian chants go for the morning meditation. And the reason I reasoned was because we want to go out into India with Ananda's vibration, with Master's vibration. That's what we want people to feel. So we started with Master and Swami's chants every morning and every evening, more in the morning, just Swami and Master, to take that energy out into India. So the Indians, who are these people? There was this beautiful experience we had at the Ramakrishna temple in Dakshineshwar near Calcutta. And it's where Master had his vision of Kali at the heart of the stone image in the autobiography of a yogi. You can read about it. So we were there, and there's this large portico, open, and we had a large group that year, and we sat in a circle and we started chanting. Some Indian, some Master's chants, both. It was about, I think, maybe an hour kirtan we did. When I woke up, when I opened my eyes, all around us were Indians. And they were singing with us. The Indian chants for sure. Bhaja Govindam, whatever we were singing. And they were all singing and just loving what we were doing. But afterwards, 2 or 3 people came up to me and said, "Who are you people? Where are you from? There's so much devotion in your group." And usually when Americans come, they come for the tourist things, and they don't sing like that. And then I knew again a prayer had been answered, that you put out that energy, you give them Ananda, you give them Master back, bringing Master back into India. Everywhere we go, there would be all these saints, no Master. They weren't showing him. So we were like, from Swamiji almost, you also have a mission to do. Take Master back to India. And so that was a very, very beautiful moment. And we did that for all the pilgrimages to come. One thing this is very personal, but because Swami knew I was struggling in the beginning with the chanting letter, and because he knew how much the Indian bhajans meant to me, I was probably born in India another life, and I came in with that love. He often would call me if he was going to record any Indian music, an Indian album, or parts of an album. He would call and ask me to come. Would you like to come and be not necessarily part of it? Sometimes I sang, but just to be there in the room. He would make sure that I was included. When I lived in India, we lived in India with him for a few years. And when he would chant, he would do a recording. He would call me and say, come, listen. And some of the deepest moments of my life, listening to him as he tuned into God, Guru, Divine Mother. So much devotion was there. And so he was also training me at the same time, giving me this gift, but training me. And the last story I will tell is one day I was in my house, the phone rang, it was Swamiji. He said, I had a dream last night. Shivani was singing this chant, and I would like to sing it to you. And it was this chant now that we know as an Ananda Hare Krishna chant. Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. That chant. And he sang it to me. And then, of course, I thanked him and how beautiful, and hung up the phone, called Jeannie right away. Jeannie, this is what just happened. This is a beautiful new chant. She said, sing it to me. I couldn't sing it to her because I forgot. And I didn't want to just sing it with what I remembered. I wanted it to be correct. So I don't remember if it was Jeannie or I that called Swami and said, please write this down so we have it exactly the way you heard it and you would like us to remember it. So chanting for me was so core to my life at Ananda in an outward way for many years, now more and more inwardly, but it changed my life, and Swamiji changed my life, and the music, whether it was choir music or chanting or small groups, whatever it was, it definitely brought me closer to Master and Swamiji. God bless.